Before we begin this evening's video address, I want everyone to make sure that if you're not subscribed, do so now. And if you are subscribed, check and make certain that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed you. Every day we get about a dozen or so people who announce that they were mysteriously unsubscribed and don't know why. Also, be sure to give the video a like. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, no, we're not taking our eye off the ball. Not at all. Now, I posted earlier today on my Twitter page how the white media is starting to say Joe Biden mentioned Kamala Harris's name. Well, keep in mind, they were laying the groundwork for this days ago. That's how white supremacy works. They lay the groundwork and then try to make it seem like, oh, this was spontaneous. You had white publications like Business Insider who were saying Joe Biden's best vice presidential option is obvious. Kamala Harris. The white media understands, just like a good television show or a good movie script, like a good screenplay, you got to make sure that you layer in certain plot and narrative elements subtly in the beginning. And the audience may not even be aware of it, but as the story unfolds, they see these things come up again and they think, oh, this was spontaneous when you had it planned all along. The same white media that creates the entertainment that so many of you are so enraptured with and so many of you are so in love with, these are also the same people who create the so-called news that you consume. This is social engineering 101 done by a bunch of master manipulators. And putting Kamala Harris and Joe Biden on the ticket together, that satanic duo, that would be exactly what it's meant to be, as a double slap in the face to the black community. That would be white supremacy's left arm saying, see, we're not scared of those black media types. See, you guys have ripped into Kamala Harris. You didn't stop her. See, you didn't do anything. You guys don't matter. This is them putting up a front. They're trying to put up a brave front. What? Us worry? We got everything under control. Why take a look at this? Yeah. Those angry black folks online saying no tangibles, no vote. But you know what? We're going to keep on going without them because they don't really matter. Those guys, they're not going to make a difference on election day. We can go right past these guys. That's what they're attempting to try to lay the groundwork for. Because it worked so well when they tried it with Bloomberg, don't you know? While everybody is talking about the coronavirus pandemic, you also notice the white supremacy is showing that it is fully able to engage in a distraction and pursue its main mission all at the same time. You've got the left arm of the political proxy puppet of white supremacy pretending as if you've got a choice at the polls when you really don't. It's time to get people back on board. Keep them on that treadmill. So you got Joe the babbling idiot Biden, who apparently has become top dog, no surprise at all, in the Democratic presidential nomination sweepstakes. And if Bernie the bigot Sanders, or BS as I like to call him, if his having to drop out for the second time, if that came as any surprise to you, then congratulations! You no doubt have your own assigned seat on the short bus. It was obvious from the jump that BS was not going to make the cut. He's not supposed to. This is the Democratic Party. They're not trying to figure out how to help a Joe Lieberman or a Bernie the bigot become the leader of their party. That ain't on their agenda. See, black folks will allow all sorts of interlopers and all sorts of strangers and all sorts of folk that you don't know from a can of paint to walk in the room, and 5 seconds later, they're the ones who we're letting run the show. Black folks are that naive and that silly. But the white supremacists are not. But no sooner than Bernie the bigot had gone ahead and bowed out of the race than Joe Biden immediately began trying to figure out if he could pander to the black vote. Yeah, he saw that what happened was, if anyone was supposed to be the black folks candidate, you would have thought that it was BS. After all, he had himself some hip-hop rejects. He had himself some old hip-hop burnouts on the payroll. Everyone from Killer Mike to Public Enema. And I said it the way that I meant it. But no amount of 1980s or 1990s rap retreads were going to be able to polish up this particular cow patty. So when Bernie the bigot, when he finally imploded, Joe Biden realized, this black media, they've broken through. Those people online who are saying that black folks don't need to be supporting anyone unless that person steps up and admits that, yes, your $20 trillion that you're supposed to be getting, we're going to make sure that we cut the check. The candidates are finding out one by one that if you don't drop off the bag, then you're going to drop out of the race. We were serious when we said it, and we are showing the persistence. We understand this is going to be a marathon, not a sprint. So for all the slow coast out there, you got a whole bunch of Democrat undercover operatives who are no smarter than the white supremacists who sent them. And they're trying to make it into a, well, if you can't get them to promise reparations in 2020, then y'all just wasting your time. See, that's the kind of thinking the white supremacy is used to seeing from most Negroes. They like to foster that attitude of instant gratification in black folks. If anything is worth having, it's worth working for. But more importantly than that, if you look at any group who's serious about their power, they're always talking about how you got to have a 50-year plan. China's got a 200-year plan. Now, let me go ahead and take some of the suspense out of that. Whenever you hear a person or a group talking about having a 50-year plan or a 200-year plan, let me go ahead and take the intimidation factor out of that for you. Do you know what that means? What it actually means when they say that? When they say we got to have a 50-year plan, what that means is we have got to have a set goal. We have to have a way of doing things and stick with it. We have to have some objectives that are not going to be subject to change every 2 years or the next election cycle. That's what it really means. That's what a 50-year plan means. It doesn't mean we have a plan that's going to take 50 years to do. What it means is we're going to stay on a given course, a set course, and we're not going to be letting this one be subject to the whims of whoever gets in office in the next 2 or 4 years. That's what it means. When you hear the black media saying that as black people, as the survivors of slavery in America, as the group who built this country, that tangibles happens to be our political issue, reparations is part of tangibles. Tangibles is a hell of a lot bigger than just reparations. Reparations is just the tip of the spear. As I keep telling you, even if slavery had never happened, we would still demand and be owed tangibles simply by benefit of the fact that we are citizens of this country. When you're citizens of a country, you're supposed to have a stake, a piece of the rock. You're supposed to have a part of that. That's what citizenship entails. And if you got people who are denying you the formal opportunities that exist, that happens to be an absolutely intolerable social hostility, and it must fall. And more importantly, you are supposed to be paid back with interest. Nobody is supposed to be standing in the way of you being able to take advantage of the formal opportunities that exist. You're supposed to be able to enjoy the formal opportunities that exist. You're not supposed to be here locked in an economic, social, and political box, and in many cases locked in a literal box, because white supremacy has decided that you're going to be the designated underclass. So don't fall for all of this garbage about, well, they haven't told y'all cut the check. Black folks have never been serious about saying that we demand our tangibles. We've never been serious about it until now. But you got some folks who are terrified that their little white supremacist buddies who they get a pat on the head from, they're terrified that these people are going to disapprove of them. So like, I got to get y'all off of that. I got to get y'all off of that. But secondly, you got a lot of black folks who are terrified of the fact that black empowerment requires that you put out some effort and that you got to produce. There are a lot of black folks who are used to living off of other people's contributions, used to living off of other people's effort. Sad as it is to say, you got plenty of black folks who even at this late date, they would still be perfectly pleased to be a slave on a plantation. They're not about to have to actually produce something. As far as they're concerned, well, that's too hard for them perhaps. When you got people who happen to be spiritually bankrupt, psychologically lazy, and just ethically depleted, these individuals ain't going to take us nowhere. So all of you white supremacist undercover operatives who we see in our comment sections, who are trying to work against us, who are always trying to make sure that you say, well, y'all can't do it. White supremacy ain't gonna fall. They ain't gonna do it. Y'all can't do it. It ain't gonna happen. Y'all just need to quit with that. These are the same people who, in just the last 24 to 36 hours, I've had probably about a handful of these idiots all using the exact same phraseology. That's how you know that these idiots are sock puppets. saying that Joe Biden is our best bet to get reparations. Voting Democrats our best bet to get reparations. Oh, you let Bernie Sanders go under. He would have been your best bet to get reparations. Never mind the fact that Bernie Sanders openly declared that he was opposed to reparations. Never mind the fact that Joe babbling idiot Biden, he has been fighting a 50-year-long race war against black people. This man hates black people. How the hell are you going to sit here and be dumb enough to say that Joe Biden's our best shot to get reparations when this bastard wouldn't even allow black folks to go to the same school that his kids went to? This bastard, he was one of the architects of the modern prison industrial complex. He was one of the main sponsors of the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act, which for the slow coasts out there, you can see some of these brain dead lead paint slurping idiots in my comments section, either on Twitter or YouTube. For you slow coasts, if you don't know what the 86 Anti-Drug Abuse Act was, that was the law that created the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between rock cocaine and powdered cocaine. The racializing of the laws, Joe Biden was one of the main proponents of that. And as if it wasn't bad enough that he supported the 86 Anti-Drug Abuse Act, he went a step farther than that. He wrote the 1994 crime bill, or as he called it, Biden's Law. Oh, he was proud of it. Back then. Yeah, but he's singing a new tune now because the political winds of change have begun to blow in the direction of justice, in the direction of black empowerment. So now Joe Biden's trying to pretend as if he had nothing to do with that. And you didn't see any of these black bootlicks holding him accountable for that. Same way you didn't see Killer Mike or Public Enema holding Bernie the bigot accountable for voting for the 94 crime bill. Yeah, you can see these shills here. These guys are just too pathetic. These guys are too freaking obvious. And lazy bastards like this ain't going to take us anywhere. You don't get what you want in this world. You get what you can leverage. And a disciplined black polity can leverage whatever level of tangibles we require. But what that requires from us is discipline. Discipline is the price that power demands. Power demands that you show how badly you want it. Now, for the bootlicks out there, for these idiots who are they've so sniveling, so low, so craven and cowardly that they like the idea of getting crumbs, and even without crumbs, if Massa just smacks them on the head, these punks are so lacking in spirit and so lacking in pride and so lacking in basic dignity. These idiots, Massa ain't even got to pat them on the head anymore. Massa can just smack them upside the head and they'll be happy to get that. You got a whole bunch of black folks out there who are not cut out for black empowerment. They're not cut out to even be black, because black means you got to stand on your own 2 feet. You got to produce. The black man is the original man. And what that means is everything from human civilization to the first structures to agriculture to astronomy and even the very language that we speak, the very powers of speaking. These are all the gifts that the black man gave to the world and did not exist until the black man did them. And now you got some folks running around talking about what we can't do. That's how you know you're dealing with an undercover operative of white supremacy. That's how you know white supremacy put the battery in their back and has its hand up their worthless rectums. And that's how you know you're dealing with a sock puppet of white supremacy. They are determined that they could care less about being businessman of the year. As far as they're concerned, the brass ring is employee of the month. Let me tell you something. White supremacy is going to fall. We know it's going to fall because black empowerment is going to crush it. And when that day comes, you ain't going to have white daddy or any of your white supremacist pals that you've been running around with carrying water for. They're not going to be looking to feed you. Hell, white supremacy just got through showing us for the last month and a half that when the crap hits the fan, white supremacy can't even provide for itself. So when this evil sick system does finally collapse for the final time, never to rise again, the only hope you're going to have to be able to see tomorrow morning is whether or not you produce for yourself and for your people. You see, these lazy, duplicitous, lying, backstabbing, undercover operatives for white supremacy that you see running around here, these clowns, they have failed the integrity test. That's what black empowerment demands. It demands integrity. And those who failed the integrity test, they also failed the longevity test too. Babbling Biden, he's trying to figure out if he can get any mileage out of Kamala Harris and whether or not this is just a trial balloon to see how well the suggestion fares or whether or not he's serious. At this point, Joe Biden is clearly senile. He's like Ronald Reagan without the speech discipline. At least Reagan was able to, when he was babbling, he was smart enough to get on script. Somebody must have told him, look down at the script. You know, if you see one of us waving at you, that means look down at the script, Ronnie. Okay, whatever. But babbling Biden, he's not even that smart. So when you see him talking about how, Kamala Harris, I'm coming for you, please give me a break. This is him trying to figure out if there's any black feminists out there who still have any sway. These guys don't have any new plays. They don't have any new material. They're tapped out. These guys are just running the same old routines over and over and over again. Kamala Harris just got her butt spanked by us just a year ago. She got crushed as soon as she came out of the gate. Only reason that they're bringing her name up now is this is the pivot. They were watching very carefully what happened with Bernie the bigot. And what they saw with him was the same thing that they saw with Michael Bloomberg. They saw that there happens to be an energized and organized black group out here making it very clear. You don't come to us and tell us what it is you're offering. If you're a public servant, a servant does not tell the one that he serves, well, here's what I think you want. No, a servant does what his master tells him to do. And we have told them what it is that we require. And they're going, well, we've got our own ideas. I didn't ask you what your ideas were. Well, you know what? Well, you know what I think. I don't care what you think. We didn't ask what you think. White supremacy is testing us right now. They're testing our resolve. They're trying to find out, were we serious when we told them that no tangibles, no vote? When we said that, did we mean it? You see, there's some Negroes out there who, if you just promise them a couple of dollars, nowhere near what everyone else is going to give, you just go ahead and do that. Some Negroes are so simple-minded, they'll immediately drop everything and say, Massa, I love yous. And they'll forget about whatever black agenda that they claim to be on. White supremacy knows that. All you got to do is wave a $1,200 check under a Negro's nose, and, well, as far as they're concerned, that's reparations. Yeah, because $1,200, that certainly makes up for the greatest crime in human history. That's compensation for not one generation, but God knows 300 plus years worth of black people enslaved and 150 years of black people mistreated and systematically robbed. $1,200. That's what black blood is worth, the blood of our ancestors and the sweat of our brow, the uncompensated sweat of our brow. That's worth $1,200 to some Negroes, the EBT crowd, the dusty dudes and hood rats. That lets you know we got to make sure that we are constantly purifying our ranks. Any Negroes who are in here talking that dumb stuff, I hit the eject button off top. But the Democrats, that's what they're trying to do. So that's the reason why you see them sitting here going, we're going to float a check to these Asians over here, and we're going to make sure illegal aliens, that means Latinos, we're going to make sure they get something too. Gavin Newsom just got through announcing that. Ayanna Pressley, she ain't talking about how black people are dying disproportionately from COVID-19, so black people need to get a check. Instead, she's saying, what about illegal aliens? Again, when you start seeing multiple people in multiple places saying the exact same thing, that's how you know the memo went out. That's how you know this wasn't an accident. This is a program at work. This is a script given to them by the DNC hierarchy. We need to see if this gets some traction. This is what we intend to do next. We got to get some traction. So you got some black folks, they're going to be seeing these other groups who the Democrats are going to be saying, we're going to do something for these guys. You're going to have some black folks going, we better vote for them so we can stay on their good sides. Yeah, because it's been paying off so well so far, hasn't it? Let me tell you something. As long as you continue to reward those who oppress you with your obedience or with your vote or with your support or your patriotism or what have you, then they have absolutely no reason to believe that they should do differently. White supremacy only responds to one thing and one thing only, and that is force. Political force, economic force, social force, media force. The white media was pretending as if Bloomberg, oh, why, he had the black vote all sewn up. Why, look at these black mayors and black preachers. Oh, he's got black support across the board. The white media was saying that crap right up until the moment that he went to that church in Alabama and the black folks turned their backs on him. Then the very next day, white media's going, okay, Michael Bloomberg's done. See, they know what they're saying is a lie. But what they don't know is whether or not black people are going to fall for it this time. And that's where these undercover operatives come in. Just more of these bought and paid for bootlicks for the Democrats, more of these shills, many of them white, by the way. A lot of these clowns who you see posting this dumb stuff, these are white people doing this, sock puppet accounts. This is race war. And as white supremacy is concerned, all's fair in love and race war. So no, we are not sitting here doing some one and done effort. And this is not a matter of, can we force reparations to come through this year? This happens to be part of the black agenda. What that means is this is going to be perpetual. This is never going to stop. But as black people, we are going to have to continue the course that we began over a decade ago to take control of the social discourse within the black community. And that's why we keep doing this. Nobody was talking about tangibles just a few years back. They damn sure weren't talking about it in the last presidential election. In 2015, when Hillary Clinton was talking about super predators and hardworking white people, you had the black media making it clear, you're going to have to now pay the price. You're going to have to do penance for your husband's sins and for your own. We, the black media, made it very clear, if Hillary Clinton ain't coming to us talking about cutting that check, if she ain't talking about tangibles in 2016, then to hell with her. See, that's what the black media was talking about back in 2015 when Donald Trump first entered the race. We said, well, you know what? If the Democrats ain't going to be breaking us off that check, they're not going to get away with the crap that Obama did. And if they're not talking about coming up to us and dropping off the bag, then to hell with it. Let Donald Trump or anybody else win. It doesn't matter. You see, in 2015, that's what the black media was saying. We were talking about tangibles while other people were talking about, I'm an Emmy-nominated producer. We are not some Johnny-come-latelys to the issue of reparations or tangibles. While other people were bringing up the idea, the only reason that they would bring up even the idea of slavery was so that they could use it as a thinly veiled front for Byron Allen. The black media was saying, no tangibles, no vote. And what happened was the unthinkable occurred. For the white left, the unthinkable occurred. Oh, surely the black vote will be scared to the polls. The black vote is no longer operating for whatever white supremacy tells us to be afraid of. You don't get anything in this world without being bold. The only thing that the timid get are table scraps and crumbs at best. And while that might do for some of these low-down, dirty scumbags, that ain't good enough for black people who actually have some pride and some dignity and actually have some integrity. No, while other people slither on their belly hoping for a few crumbs from Massa's table, you got black empowerment saying we're elbowing everybody out the way, we're bullying white supremacy, and we're taking the whole damn cake. Because that's what you do when it comes to power. Power is not given, it's taken. We're not going to be begging anybody. Well, if we're on our best behavior and if we show Mr. Biden that we're not at all holding a grudge because of how you've mistreated us. No, sir, no way. And we're not going to bring up that 94 crime bill anymore. We're not going to bring up Biden's law anymore. No, sir. No, sir. It's all about that Donald Trump, that mean old Trump. We ain't going to cause you no more trouble. Will you please do at least something for us like you did these Asians? Shut up, niggers. That's the game that they think is going to be played. And the black media is here to make it clear. Brand new day, brand new game. And while you're busy trying to pretend as if, nothing's going to change, you see, nothing's going to change. White supremacy likes doing that mess. They will always be defiant and strident and telling you what they're not going to do right up until you have broken their resolve and now it's time for them to cave in. But as Dr. John Henrik Clarke beautifully put it, you got to make sure that you demand something that requires white supremacy to give up its power. We are coming to take white supremacy's power. We are going to put pain on white supremacy by putting pain on the would-be beneficiaries of it. We understand that this is a two-legged stool that they got here. And the thing is, a two-legged stool can stand. but only if it's perfectly balanced. But it doesn't take much to knock it over. We're going to chop one of those legs out from under the two-legged stool of the political facade that white supremacists put forward as being an electoral choice. And all of these distractions, Kamala Harris is not going to distract anyone. And I don't know if Biden's serious about it. Maybe they are desperate enough where they're looking and going, well, we got to try to rally that Asian vote. We know that the Democrats are hopelessly trying to stitch together some sort of Frankenstein monster of a non-black coalition. They realize that there's too many black folks who are on code, too many black folks who are serious, too many black folks who are making it clear, we're not going to be voting for you unless you drop off the bag. And that being the case, they're trying to figure out, can we galvanize these other groups? Haven't you noticed that no sooner than the white media decided to mention, oh, there's a disproportionate number of black people dying from COVID-19. Next thing you know, the Democrats immediately say, but there are more Hispanics dying from it in New York City. Yeah, they changed their headline real quick, didn't they? Because they saw what the black media said. Hey, well, as long as black folks are the main ones dying from it, that means we should get a check more than anybody else, and our check should be bigger than everyone else's. But there is something I do want to say about that whole thing, the white media's brief little spate of reporting on black deaths from the coronavirus. First of all, you have to be careful about how the white media frames things. See, they conflate COVID-19 infection rates with the death rate. They make it like if the infection rate and the death rate is the same thing. A death rate can be confirmed, but an infection rate cannot. And as many in the black media have noted, what's been happening is they've been just saying that if somebody dies, period, and afterwards you do the blood test on the cadaver and you find, they had coronavirus in their system. Well, maybe coronavirus got them, maybe it didn't, but they're dead. They had coronavirus. We're going to say it was a coronavirus death. Well, hell, this person had 1 foot in the grave 2 months ago. This person had COPD before coronavirus even existed. Doctor gave this person 6 months to live, and that was 4 months ago. Well, they had coronavirus, so that must have been what got them. So we got to be very careful here and not let the white media dictate to us what the stats are. I mean, you would think black folks would learn something from the Tuskegee experiment. Some of us have. But if you did read the white media's propaganda pieces regarding black death rates and COVID-19, you saw over and over and over again that practically no states are actually keeping score. They're not actually keeping track of it. In fact, very few places are keeping count. The Centers for Disease Control is not keeping count of the race of those who die from it. Very few places are actually keeping a head count of the race of who dies from COVID-19 and who doesn't. So why are we seeing this tsunami of white media headlines saying that black people are the majority of infections then? It's for the same reason that we see the black rates of marijuana use is the same as the white rate of marijuana use, but black people are the ones who get punished for it. White people happen to be the majority of heart disease victims in the United States, but per capita, more black people are likely to die from it. See, this is white media manipulation. White supremacy never stops its psychopathic race war on black people. White supremacy is always playing the long game. And they're trying to manufacture a narrative that black people are the face of the coronavirus outbreak, and hence black people's movements must be controlled because this disease is actually a black disease. And it's highly contagious. And we'll have a nationwide epidemic unless we control it. And that means you got to control these black people. That's all that they're doing here. This is meant to lay the groundwork for using this as cover for yet another offensive against us. Same way that they did with Me Too. Black people are the main ones who die from this disease. Hence, black people are the main ones who have it. Now, that's a non sequitur, by the way. It does not follow that even if you want to concede the idea that black people are the main ones dying from COVID-19, it doesn't follow that black people automatically follow that black people are the main ones infected by it. That would be like saying since Native Americans were the main ones who were dying from smallpox because of those blankets that those Europeans gave them, well, that means Native Americans must have been the main ones who had it. Of course, one has to ask, well, where in the world did those smallpox-laced blankets come from then? Because the Native Americans didn't have it before those blankets. Well, those Europeans surely didn't have smallpox. After all, if the Native Americans were the ones dying from it, then that means that they must have been the only ones who had it. Surely couldn't have been the Europeans. Europeans were all healthy. You see how that works, don't you? This is a logical fallacy, and they know it. But because they own so much media real estate, they can take their lies and convert it into the public truth. They can carpet bomb the American people with a false narrative, and even if the public knows that it's a pack of lies, the problem is it's out there. So, of a necessity, it's going to be part of the discussion, even if for no other reason than for people to say, look at what's out here. And true, as we all know, there's some people so simple-minded, so weak-willed, that if the white media tells them something, they'll automatically buy it hook, line, and sinker simply because the white media said it. Of course, this virus is going to disproportionately affect the poor. They have the least means to protect or sustain themselves. And it will, of course, also affect blue-collar workers because they can't work from home. These are the people who work low-skilled jobs, but in many cases, they're the ones who were shut out of the so-called information age economy. So e-commuting's out of the question for them. Of course, all of these factors are going to apply to black people more than any other group in the country. Why were they shut out in the first place? Well, in the U.S., your economic class is overwhelmingly determined by your race and no other factor. The schools you can get into determined by race. The jobs you get determined by race. Whether or not you're going to be targeted by the prison industrial complex determined by race. If they get you on some penny any charge, and if you're black, there's a two-tiered justice system. If you're black, you get charged with possession. If you're white, you get a verbal reprimand. It's going to be dismissed. You can bet on that. If you're white, it's sexual misconduct. If you're black, it's rape. If you're white, it's going to be misdemeanor assault. If you're black, assault. There's a misdemeanor for everything. And that's how you know that's what the white suspects are going to get. They're going to get the misdemeanor version of it. If you're black, no matter what it is, you're going to get the felony version. And that being the case, they've already got you when it comes to employment, when it comes to education, when it comes to loans, when it comes to housing and everything else. Now they got something on paper they can point to and say, see, we got you by the book, buddy. We got you by the book. It's documented, buddy. And the white media's job is to use its influence to try to excuse this fact away, or better yet, blame the victims. It's all black people's fault. Why, to hear the white media tell it black people are the single most powerful group in America. To the extent that there is a racial disparity to this viral outbreak's morbidity rate, it has far less to do with diet and exercise and much more to do with the American social order, which is based on anti-black racism. If any group should be getting federal bailout money, it's black people. Not only to address the current crisis, but also to keep it from happening again. No one seriously believes that this virus is going to disappear with the spring. All indicators point to this being a seasonal illness unless and until some sort of serious medical intervention, i.e. a vaccine, is developed. But understand, whereas black people see this virus as being a problem, for white supremacy, they see it as being a solution. As we've witnessed in Texas and Florida, two states with a centuries-long track record of virulent anti-black racism, this virus has become their excuse. It's their little excuse to do some anti-black ethnic cleansing. We're going to be racially profiling all black people. You're already seeing the reports coming in. They say, well, we're looking for anyone with Louisiana tags. Yeah, but they seem to be stopping any black people who are coming in. If you're a black person coming in, you didn't stop in Louisiana, did you? You're coming in on I-10. You're coming in on I-20. Did you stop in Louisiana? Well, you don't see any Louisiana tags on my car, do you? Well, we just need to know if you stopped there. If you did, how long were you there? It has nothing to do with where you came from. It's about the color of your skin. And this is going to be their nice little method to try to excuse that away and say, well, we got cover for that. Oh, this is not about race at all. It's about whether or not you came from Louisiana. Well, why are you stopping me? I'm coming in with California tags and I came in from the West, not the East. Well, you sure you didn't go through Louisiana and then come around through Oklahoma and Arkansas? You sure about that? Now, this is not about public safety. Florida right now has a coronavirus outbreak that's exploding. However, Florida wouldn't close its beaches. They left them open. Governor's talking about we ain't closing no churches and we're only going to close a few businesses and stop trying to tell us how to run our state. I already showed you the video of what happened when they tracked the cell phone positions of all those people who were down in Palm Beach, overwhelmingly white, and how all those people just spread out and dispersed across the United States. Oh, there is a state in America that's acting as a vector for COVID-19, but it ain't Louisiana. Texas wouldn't have allowed 70 mostly white spring break vacationers to go to Mexico and come back with at least 40 of them now having the virus. If they're so hot and bothered about stopping the spread of this pandemic, then why is it that they're not making sure the very people who are moving around the most have their movements curtailed? Because it's not about that. White supremacy is well versed and highly practiced when it comes to using any excuse as a pretext for targeting us. Of course, there's a double standard. That's the entire point. That's what they're trying to get across. We got to reinforce that double standard. Because right now we've been kind of acting like black folks and white folks should be treated the same when it comes to this. No, we got to make sure this is a black thing and make it clear. If white people got it, well, that doesn't matter. That means absolutely nothing. We're not going to be curtailing their movements. And we're not going to be locking them up if we see them not practicing social distancing. And if a white person comes to a store, they can show up with a hockey mask and an empty bag in one hand and a semi-automatic rifle in the other, and we're not going to tell that person they got to leave. But if a black person shows up with one of those masks on, well, you must be a thief. You got to leave. We'll call the cops if you don't. When white people gather by the tens of thousands on a beach, hugging and grabbing and sweating all over each other, then they go head off to all points of the nation. That's not a reckless and unacceptable act on the part of Florida. Oh, well, we got to talk about Mardi Gras. Well, let's go ahead and talk about the fact that Mardi Gras was for 2 weeks. Meanwhile, you had the governor of Florida. He had people on the freaking beaches for over a month. Wasn't doing nothing about it. When white people gather by the tens of thousands jam-packed cheek to jowl at Disney World to see a fireworks show, they don't say that Disney World was reckless for doing that. Why would you deliberately, when you have a nationwide epidemic breaking out, why would you deliberately say, hey, everybody, come and see the fireworks show. Before we close, we're going to put on a hell of a show. Everybody come and see it. You got a pandemic breaking out, and you know the government's saying, you got to keep a distance between everyone. And Disney says to hell with that. And nobody comes down on Disney because of that. Nobody says, you know what, Disney, maybe we need to have you guys closed permanently for something like this. Nobody makes an issue of it. Both Texas and Florida have been some of the worst offenders when it comes to violating all of the new normals that we've been told have to be observed during this pandemic. And yet there's no need to close any state borders to Florida. Florida's numbers of infected people have now caught up to Louisiana's. And yet nobody's saying that we're going to be closing our state borders to anybody with Florida tags. Nobody is trying to stigmatize Floridians. Nobody's saying, people from Florida, you better have a form. We're going to have you fill out a form and you better have it with you before you show up, and you better have proof of where it is. If you intend to stay here, unless you're passing through, we are declaring our entire state a sundown state. You better not be here past sundown. If you're passing through, you better make sure you don't stop. Don't even stop for gas. You just keep on going. And if you do intend to stop, you better make sure we know exactly where you are, and you better be there because we'll be checking. Nobody's doing that with Florida or Texas, and nobody's reprimanding them for their behavior either. Florida's coronavirus count is already up to 17,000 infected. And keep in mind, they've only just begun doing testing in Florida, and everybody in Florida admits they ain't testing worth a damn. If you want to test for COVID-19 in Florida, you got a better chance of finding a polar bear than you do of finding a place that'll test you. So the numbers are hideously undercounted. And yet nobody's saying we need to go ahead and bar Floridians from entering our state. So what that lets you know is there's a program at work. They've been waiting a long time to be able to go ahead and use this as a proxy for black people. They've been waiting a long time to be able to pull something like this. I mean, hell, they do it in every other regard. They use all sorts of other things as euphemisms and metaphors for black people and claiming, oh, well, this is about poor people. No, you mean black people. Well, this is about people who don't have a certain level of education. Well, that's mostly meant to weed out black people. Well, you see, this is about black people who didn't go to such and such a school or such and such a place. It's not about race, you know. Their lives mean nothing to them compared to their power. And as we've always taught you, power is the ability to do what others are not allowed to do. This disease was brought to the U.S. through air travel. Black people categorically are not airline passengers. This virus was spread by airline passengers and cross-country commuters and travelers. Black people are categorically not airline travelers or long-distance cross-country commuters. However, we are an economic underclass because we were made that way, and racist policies are put in place to keep it that way. We are pre-selected to be deprived of economic means, and this isn't accidental. Of course, as an economic underclass, black people will naturally be more likely to have to share a habitation with other people, and these accommodations are going to be small, because it takes money to afford larger accommodations. So if one person in this house with multiple people is unhealthy, they're not going to be able to stay a healthy distance from everyone else, and they won't be able to go anywhere else. Poor people don't have the option of those in the society who have been pre-selected to have economic means. See, Chris Cuomo can go down in the basement of his spacious home, and it's cool. In the black community, that has all been unheard of. It all comes back to economics. Asians hadn't, and to the best of my knowledge, still haven't lost so much as one business due to any phony xenophobia. When it comes to the coronavirus, there is a hoax, all right, but the hoax is that there's some sort of epidemic of anti-Asian racism. I posted on my Twitter page that there happened to be this so-called reporter. She called herself criticizing black people in DC because they weren't social distancing. And one of the things I pointed out was that if she was so hot and bothered about people not social distancing in DC, why didn't she say anything to a particular Chinese restaurant, Queen's English? It's in DC, and they were on Instagram bragging about how they had a packed house. And how great it was that people were not refusing to come to their restaurant even with the epidemic in full swing. So this whole thing about, oh, nobody's coming to the Asian store, this happens to be certain interested parties who are looking and going, well, we don't want that to become a trend, so we're going to try to shame people on that. If you're not coming to our stores because you're an anti-Asian racist, that's what it is. Have you seen any of them close up shop because of any sort of refusal by the public to patronize them? Give me a break. And yet you had Congresswoman Grace Meng demand billions that Asian American businesses should be given a check for them. She wasn't saying, well, there has to be a check for all small businesses. She said, no, just the Asian American ones. They need a check. And she was doing this before any of them was even in any trouble, before any of them had even encountered their first problem or had trouble making their first payroll. She was already saying, we need a check. We need a big check. Everyone's being forced to prove whether they can stand on their own or if they've always been a ward of the state. That's one thing that's come to the fore with this pandemic. People are being forced to have to state for the record now who they're leaning on. Do they lean on themselves or do they go running off to the powers that be? And these groups who know that they depend on white supremacy for every crumb of their daily bread, they're not even waiting. They're just running straight to white daddy for help. Now, as black empowerment, we require the ability to disrupt and derail white supremacy's operations. And keep in mind that when it comes to the political sphere, that happens to be a key part of our offensive. Right now, if you look at the what's supposed to be the black misleadership, we got nothing but a bunch of go along to get along Negroes, all of them handpicked by white supremacy. I get tired of some of the slow coasts in my comments who say, wish these black politicians would do that. You didn't choose those black politicians, stupid. That's why they're not doing anything. You're asking white supremacy's bootlicks, you're asking their handpicked puppets, and you're sitting there going, how come, I wish they would do that? Well, let me tell you something. The reason these bastards don't do anything for us is because they were chosen by our enemies. None of them came from among our ranks. They were all groomed and selected by our oppressors. And each one of them depends on white supremacy for every crumb of their daily bread. And that isn't going to change unless we change it. Stop talking stupid. Of course, Ayanna Pressley is going to be out there repping for immigrants and repping for feminists and such, because as far as she's concerned, that's her job. Her job is not to represent black people. Her job is to make sure that the white powers that be continue to give her a couple of crumbs. This is how it works in politics. These political whores and their children who all have some sort of so-called consultant business. You ever notice that? Seems like everybody in D.C. and their children and their in-laws and their siblings, they're all consultants. They all got a consulting business, but they can never tell you what they consult for. You see, in the United States, every politician and their children and their siblings and their in-laws, they all have consulting companies. And this is because in the U.S., this is how bribes are given to the politicians. This is how corporations and wealthy individuals hand out bribes. You don't give an envelope full of cash to this or that politician, though there are a few like Rod Blagojevich who are that stupid or naive or unsophisticated to still be asking for an envelope full of cash. And you see what happens, they wind up in leg irons. These consulting companies that you see these politicians and their relatives and siblings and such have. These are all dummy front companies used to disguise the bribes that these guys get as being legitimate business earnings. Why, this isn't a bribe from Corporation XYZ. This is legitimate business. The money goes straight from the consultant company to the politician's pockets, or his spouse or children. This is how the wealthy and the influential pay for their political access. The consulting companies are nothing more than a front for their bribery operations. This is how politicians go to Washington, D.C. poor and they come out rich. They don't get paid millions of dollars, and yet within a few years they got millions in the bank. These people who couldn't get $1 million if they robbed a bank, once they go to Washington, all of a sudden, the money just comes roaring in. Don't you think there's something a little bit strange with that? And these black politicians, they play the game too. Now, of course, they don't get paid anywhere near what their white counterparts do. But for a sellout, being close to massa, well, that's worth its weight in gold. Proximity to massa, that's nothing but psychic benefits, but for the dedicated bootlick, that's more than enough. And white power knows it. The white supremacists understand that John Lewis doesn't need to be paid millions of dollars to toe the line. He doesn't need to be paid to say, get out here and vote for these good white liberals because people died. I shed blood in Selma. And I ain't mad about it, though. They don't need to pay John Lewis to play the fool. So they don't pay him. White supremacy has set up a self-reinforcing machine. They stole the wealth that our ancestors generated, and they use part of that wealth to arbitrarily select compliant sellout Negroes to do their bidding. And they use the rest of their money to fund a media who will try to legitimize and promote these sellouts. You go on Twitter and it calls clowns like John Lewis a civil rights giant. These are white supremacists trying to dictate to us what to believe. They figure if they call him a giant, that we'll be too timid to challenge that, or maybe we'll be flattered. Oh, these white folks, they saying that this Negro over here, that he's a giant. Oh, he getting respect from massa. That's so wonderful. Well, we aren't the black baby boomers. White supremacy must fall, and the black bootlicks like John Lewis and the Congressional Immigrant Caucus, Black Caucus, and local traitors like Lori Lightfoot in Chicago and Mayor Sylvester the sellout in Houston, they must also be defeated right alongside their white supremacist masters. Money for specifically Asian businesses, and now you have both Lori the lesbian Lightfoot and Ayanna Pressley demanding money for illegal aliens, which of course is just code for Hispanic, because that's who it's going to go to. It's not going to be going to any flood of Korean illegal aliens, and it damn sure ain't going to be going to any Haitian illegal immigrants. Hey, if you got any black folks who illegally came here from the islands, you ain't getting one penny. See how they're getting codified along the lines of race, and they're using their little code words. Meanwhile, the white media says the black people are, to hear them tell it, the main ones dying from the coronavirus, and no one is saying that we ought to get federal money or a bailout or anything. If we don't say it, no one's going to say it. This is mass racial theft going on. They use their position as state and national administrators to confiscate our tax dollars from the black community and then give our tax money to everyone except us. And this COVID-19 bailout situation is actually a microcosm of what white power does to us every single year in every city and state in the country. The only difference is now we've got a stark example, just a putridly in-your-face example of the racial breakdown right here in your face. You see how racially biased that they are. They're being blatant with it, deliberately doing this right in front of you. There's no way that it can be covered up. So white supremacy is going, okay, we're not going to, but you Negroes, you need to just accept it. Oh, and you better hurry up and go to the polls to Joe Biden. I mean, we're not giving you anything now, but if you guys are really good, who knows? Maybe there'll be a street light that will replace in your neighborhood, or maybe, oh well, we don't know. Maybe there'll be some economic development. What does that mean? Well, we're going to give some money to John Lewis's consulting company, and he's black, so there's going to be a LIFT Act. I hear that Kamala Harris is trying to get that scam off the ground again. Something like that. Well, you didn't give the Asians a LIFT Act. And you're not offering these illegal aliens a LIFT Act. You're doing something specifically for them. Well, you expect we're going to do something that's only going to benefit black people? No! Yeah, but you will do something that only benefits Asians, or that only benefits Hispanics, or that only benefits immigrants. You will do that, though. There is no black leadership in political office because we, the grassroots, have not put any leadership there. And if it does not come from us, then it will never come. That's a fact that some of you perpetual whiners, you need to learn that. Stop whining about where's black politicians that do that. Stupid, you don't have any black politicians. You just have black political whores. Now you can change that, but the thing about it is you got to stop waiting to see if maybe I or Jason or Tariq is going to do it for you. You see, the white supremacists, they don't have to wait to see if Rush Limbaugh is going to do something for them. The white supremacists don't sit back and see if Sean Hannity is going to do something, if he's going to do all the heavy lifting for them. The white supremacists don't sit back and see if Bill O'Reilly or Bill Maher, truth be told, is going to carry water for white supremacy. They're tripping over their own shoelaces to do it for themselves. They don't wait to sit back and see if Robert Mercer or any other well-to-do white supremacist is going to be pushing their agenda. They do it themselves. When you go up against white supremacy, you find, why in the world is it that we're always inundated and flooded with all of these white supremacist mouthpieces and hangers-on and sympathizers? It's because they understand that they're supposed to be moving as a group, that they're not supposed to be sitting back and letting somebody else basically be taking all the arrows, or somebody else is going to be the horse pulling the wagon. They get that. Too many black people, even in this place, don't. All these do-nothing Negroes the white media tries to present to us as being our leaders, they're puppets. No different than the so-called provisional government that the U.S. set up in Afghanistan or Iraq. That's why black media exposes and assails these sellouts daily. Black people have been conditioned to obey the white supremacist lie of, all you need are black faces in high places. Do you know what that is? That is literally giving a free pass to every sellout, bootlick, backstabber, and turncoat among us to sell us out. That's giving the backstabbers the green light. But as I've been telling you for years, power is used as a shield long before it's used as a sword. That's where we are right now. What we are doing is we are forging that shield. The sword, however, will be forged shortly thereafter and put to good use. We require a voice to speak up for us in the very places the white power thinks that they are safe, the very places the white power thinks that they've shut us out. Because that's what they like to do. They like to try to set up these little bubbles where they pretend that, oh, we have all the voices, the relevant voices of all. We are the party that looks like America. The relevant voices are here. Well, they may be here, but they won't be saying anything. We have to demonstrate that we can penetrate white supremacy's defenses, that we are able to occupy the very inner sanctum of what they see as their most secure places. They set up these little political safe spaces, and we got to show that we can violate those safe spaces. Right now, black empowerment has no one in the federal system. And it's not that we can't do it. It's because that there are too many black folks who don't want that to be the focus. This must change. There is no one who is repping black empowerment. Seriously, there's nobody who we can say this is a dyed-in-the-wool B1 who we put in power. There's nobody like that at any place, anywhere on the political scene. And there won't be unless and until we put them there. There are many of you who have been thinking, hey, do I have what it takes? You probably do, but you're not going to get anything done if you just sit around waiting for somebody to say, yes, you're our man, you should do that. You know, Jason Black didn't sit back. I mean, you can talk to TBA. You can call him anytime you want. He didn't sit back waiting to see if somebody was going to tell him, you know, you really ought to do this. He looked and said, well, if it's going to be, it's up to me. Same thing with Tariq. He wasn't waiting to see if somebody was going to come up to him and say, well, Tariq, you got some books and you published and you was on TV. You know, you really ought to run for us. That's amazing. No other group operates like that. Nobody told Ayanna Pressley or Grace Ming or any of the rest of the fakers, frauds, and phonies that, hey, you ought to run for. They looked and said, let me see if I can go ahead and slice myself off a little something from white supremacy. They nominated themselves for that. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad once said that there's nothing more dangerous than a man with nothing to lose, and that you don't need 1,000 such men to change the world. One will do. We need to find, fund, and front our own people to be our operatives, to go into these bastions of white power and to start to take some territories. Same way that we've taken some media real estate, it's time to go into the offline world and start taking back our political power. Malcolm talked about that 50 years ago. He gave the definition of what black nationalism was. It's control of the politics and the economics of the areas in which we live. And control of the politics means you don't have some mealy-mouthed, buck-toothed scumbag like John Lewis going, I spilled blood in Selma. And you got the white supremacists saying, this is your representative. This guy speaks for you. And we're sitting here going, how the hell you figure that? And white supremacy's going, well, he spilled blood in Selma, and we know we're the ones who spilled his blood. So, and he thanked us for it afterwards, said he wouldn't do nothing. He's a good boy, and y'all need to be just like him. Black empowerment will not come into its own until we demonstrate that we can exercise power over the bootlicks and punish them. We've had a couple of good examples, but we need to show that there's none of these scumbags who are going to be allowed to operate against the interests of black people in America, and then they get to saunter off and to enjoy whatever few spoils white supremacy gave them. But that's going to come down to us. That's going to come down to you. We are asserting ourselves in stages, and at this stage, our agenda requires a voice inside the places where white power thinks that it shut us out. White supremacy thinks that the political arena is its own personal property. It's a safe space where they can tell any lies, where they can formulate any policies, and nobody's going to say boo. They got a compliant group of House Negroes calling itself a black caucus in Congress. And these guys, they never challenge what white supremacy does, and they never do anything for black people, and that's the way the white supremacy set it up. That's deliberate. It would only take 3 individuals to change that. It would only take 3 individuals to substantively actually put a stop to this stuff, but it's got to start with one. That's how all insurrections begin. It begins with a single voice. Why not you? The white media is terrified. You see, ignoring black empowerment didn't work. Ignoring the black media didn't work. They figured if they ignored us, we would go away. We didn't go away. We've gotten louder. And this pandemic has not distracted us. It's not derailed our efforts. It hasn't diminished our spirit or dampened our energy. And it's not going to get us off at tangibles. The white supremacy has been seen all this time. When they bring up coronavirus, we're sitting here going, yeah, what about that check for us? Like, damn, that's all these guys think about. You're damn right. That's our issue. And it ain't going to change. Whatever it is you bring up, we're going to bring the subject back to. Now, about that bag. You haven't cut the check. And even if you cut the check, what, you think one time and that's it? Nah, you cut the check, you're going to keep cutting it. Damn right, because that is our issue. No, this pandemic has not dampened our energy at all. As they see, it's turbocharged us. Ethnic groups, illegal aliens, special interests, they've all demanded money because of the virus. And white supremacy has cut them a check. This while they tell us that, well, we need a study and a congressional hearing and a public debate, and we'll get back to you. They have blatantly demonstrated what we've been telling you all along. The money is there. They just figured they would talk us to death, and some of you have let them do it. And since they picked these black tools to pretend to be our leaders, they can rest assured that the congressional black talkers are not about to make an issue out of it. They're not going to object to any of this. They're not going to say, wait a minute, it's time for a check for black folks. They're not going to say that. So let babbling Biden get out there and float whatever trial balloons he wants, and they can go ahead and prop up the desiccated husk of Kamala Harris's presidential dreams all they want. And if they think, oh, we're going to rebrand her as being Asian this time, and we're going to use her and well, look at her skin color and her features. Why, you can just say that she's anything. You know, she's ethnically ambiguous. We can use that. Or whatever other asinine ploy it is that they pull. One, it's not going to get black folks as a group back onto the treadmill. And it's not going to get us off of tangibles. You're not going to tell me that Kamala Harris going to the White House is a substitute for reparations, or that, well, we can't do something only for black people. They've just made it now where they can't escape it. They have the poster child for ignoring black people's economic interests, and they have her name being floated out there. This is a golden opportunity, the chance to humiliate Kamala Harris twice in a row. Christmas must have come early. That's all I got to say. Christmas came early this year if they go through with this. But regardless, we're going to stay on our path. Our agenda isn't changing. The white supremacists can tell themselves any feel-good lies they want. There is no line of rhetoric that they can come up with. There is no scare tactic or fear-mongering that they can engage in that is going to get us off at tangibles. And by making sure that they go ahead and float some money to these other groups, they have reinforced our argument and reinforced our resolve. Oh, the white supremacists, they can lie to themselves and say white supremacy is alive and well. That's what they tell themselves right now. White supremacy is alive and well. Why? White supremacy has never been stronger. It's never been more stable. And its enemies have never been more subdued. That's what they're telling themselves right now. And the white supremacists tell themselves that they're healthy, they're fine, they're perfect. See, the coverage that they've given to this coronavirus and trying to make black people into the face of it, this is a racial analogy for what white supremacy has always done. Always tried to tell itself, well, you know, granted we got the majority of the illnesses and the majority of the health maladies, but you know what? We're fine. It's these black people over here. They're the ones who really need help. To abandon white supremacy would require them to compete. And white supremacy has conditioned them to be lazy, ignorant, and unable to compete. The white supremacists haven't had to compete in centuries. And now they're in a situation where they have to and they can't. All they can do is to tell themselves everything's fine. You know what this reminds me of? This reminds me of the final days of the Soviet Union. The Russians were telling the entire world that the Soviet Union was fine, never been more stable. All the way up until the fall of the Berlin Wall, the Soviets were still saying communism was winning and that the world would have true socialism in our time. Next thing you know, the Berlin Wall fell and the Soviets were waving the white flag, and now there's a McDonald's in Moscow. The reprobate slave owners of the Deep South, they were still proclaiming that black subjugation was the will of God and that no force on earth would change it. And then in 1865, our ancestors walked off the plantations, and that was that. White supremacy is a lie, perpetrating a fraud, a number of frauds. And up until now, they have not had a sustained effort at the grassroots by a critical mass of black people determined to change this. Do not let the naysayers pay them no never mind. These are white supremacy's operatives. You can tell because their talking points, they all cut and paste the same garbage, so that's how you know it's coming from a common source. Any individuals who are not with the black agenda, any of them who do not believe that white supremacy will be defeated, these are agents of white supremacy and they do not belong among us. We have absolutely no illusions that black empowerment is going to become a reality overnight. Nobody said that it's going to. And it's not going to become a reality overnight. White supremacy has stood for half a millennium. You don't destroy a system like that overnight. But we will destroy it. We will break the resolve of our enemies. We will break their economic backs and their political will. And we are going to take back everything they've taken from us with interest. But all these things are going to depend on you. It is much more important what we are doing than what our enemies are doing. Victory is in our hands, but we're the ones who have to do the work. We will not allow the lazy or the defeatist, or rather the sellouts, bought-off bootlicks. We're not going to allow any of these undercover operatives for white supremacy to distract us in any way. We're staying on course. We're staying on the path. These are the same individuals who said that reparations would never even be an issue. These are the same individuals who said you can't get black people on code when it comes to voting. And now that we're starting to do that, now they're having to move the goalpost back. Have you noticed that? They're moving the goalpost back. You see, these things don't happen overnight, but now that there's starting to be some movement, there's starting to be some changes, they're hearing the rhetoric that starts here being said on the political stage. Now that they're seeing that, instead of them looking and going, guess we were wrong, they're not going to admit that they were wrong. So instead it's, well, let's move the goalpost back. Okay, and after we go ahead and overrun that position, where are you going to move it to then? Not that it matters. When it comes to black empowerment, there's only one of two sides. Either you're on the side of justice or you're on the side of white supremacy. But you cannot answer that question in words. You answer that question in deeds. Now is the time for us to begin laying the groundwork for invading and taking space in the political sphere. When I say political, I mean political in the pure sense of the term, the distribution of power in a given setting, but also to make sure that when it comes to the electoral stage, white supremacy can't have it all to themselves. It's time for us to show that we are more than just a voice, that we are professional troublemakers for white supremacy, and we can give the bastards more trouble than they can handle. But understand, all the whining about how wish there were some black politicians who would do for us, that doesn't happen from the top down. You're still waiting to see if white supremacy is going to present you with a ballot that has black empowerment on it. White supremacy will never put black empowerment on the ballot. White supremacy will never have black empowerment as one of the planks of its political platform. We've made it manifestly clear that we are sharing nothing with white supremacy, nor should we. But at some point, we have to show the severity of our intent. There is nobody coming to bail you out. There's nobody who's going to do the heavy lifting for you. Instead of looking around wondering, well, which one of them's going to do it, you need to take the initiative. That's what the black media has done. If you've learned nothing else from the example of brothers like Jason, Tariq, and myself, the one thing you should have learned is nothing's going to happen unless we make it to happen. You've already got your mouthpiece. You've already got the thought leaders. You've already got the people banging the drum at the grassroots. Now it's time to take this thing to the next level. Because ultimately what we don't want to be in the position that Grace Ming's in, where what she's doing is she's going, white daddy, we've been serving white supremacy. Don't forget about us, white daddy. We don't want to be in that position. We want to be in a position where instead of saying cut the check, we're able to look at one another and say, here's the check.